In this episode, we begin with a simple but important truth about security incidents. When something goes wrong, the first challenge is often not fixing it, but understanding what kind of problem it is. Brand new learners sometimes imagine incident management as a dramatic process that starts only after a major attack is obvious. But most real work begins much earlier, when someone is trying to decide whether an unusual event is harmless, suspicious, or clearly damaging. That is where classification and categorization come in, and those two ideas give structure to what could otherwise become confusion, delay, and unnecessary panic. For someone studying the Certified Information Security Manager, CISM, this topic matters because security leadership depends on making calm, consistent decisions, not just reacting to technical details, and those decisions are only as good as the way incidents are identified, labeled, and understood from the start. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful way to begin is by separating the idea of an event from the idea of an incident, because beginners often blend them together. An event is anything observable that happens in a system, network, application, or business process, and many events are completely normal, such as a user signing in, a server restarting, or a firewall blocking routine traffic. An incident is different because it represents a meaningful threat to operations, data, systems, or business objectives, or it shows that a control has failed in a way that deserves attention and management action. Classification helps determine whether something belongs in the broad family of incidents at all, while categorization helps place that incident into a more specific group so the organization can respond appropriately, assign ownership, track patterns, and improve over time. Without that distinction, teams may overreact to harmless activity, underreact to dangerous activity, or waste precious time debating labels when they should already be coordinating a response. Classification is best understood as the higher-level act of deciding what level of concern an issue deserves and what basic type of situation it represents. Think of it as the first sorting decision that turns raw information into something actionable for management and response teams. An organization might classify issues by severity, by business impact, by urgency, by whether data may be involved, by whether systems are disrupted, or by whether there is reason to believe malicious activity is occurring. These are not merely administrative labels, because they shape the pace of escalation, the people who need to be involved, the communication path, and the resources assigned to the situation. If a hospital loses access to patient records, for example, the classification decision quickly tells leaders that the issue is not just technical inconvenience, but a potential patient care problem, which means the incident is treated very differently than a small malfunction affecting a low-risk internal tool. Categorization goes one level deeper by describing what kind of incident it appears to be, and this is where patterns become useful. A category might identify malware activity, unauthorized access, denial of service, data leakage, phishing, insider misuse, system misconfiguration, third-party compromise, physical security breach, or loss of equipment. These categories help teams avoid treating every problem as unique, because although the details always vary, many incidents share response needs, reporting expectations, and lessons learned. A phishing incident may require mail analysis, user outreach, credential protection, and broader awareness actions, while a denial of service problem may require network coordination, provider support, and service continuity decisions. Good categorization makes incident handling more repeatable, and repeatability is one of the most important ideas in security management because it allows the organization to respond with discipline instead of improvising every time something unusual happens. One of the most common beginner misunderstandings is the belief that there must always be a perfect category immediately available the moment an issue appears. In reality, incident information is often incomplete at the start, and early reports may be vague, emotional, or partially wrong. Someone may report that the network is down when the real issue is an identity problem, or a user may think their account was hacked when the actual cause was a password reset failure. or a suspicious file may first appear to be malware and later turn out to be an authorized administrative tool. That is why mature organizations allow initial classification and categorization to be updated as evidence improves, rather than pretending the first label must be final. The goal is not to win a naming contest at the beginning, but to create a reasonable working description that enables timely action while leaving room for refinement as investigators learn more. A very practical way to understand classification is through severity, because this is one of the most visible methods used by leadership and operations teams. Severity asks how serious the incident is for the organization, and that seriousness usually reflects business disruption, sensitive data exposure, regulatory consequences, safety concerns, financial harm, customer effect, or damage to reputation. High-severity incidents typically involve major service interruption, confirmed compromise of important systems, or exposure of valuable information, while lower-severity incidents might involve limited scope, minimal business effect, or strong containment already in place. The key lesson is that severity is not the same thing as technical sophistication, because a simple phishing message that captures executive credentials may be far more severe than a highly complex exploit that never reaches a critical asset. Strong classification methods therefore focus on consequence and business effect, not just how interesting the technical details appear to the security team. Another widely used lens is the combination of impact and urgency, which gives a more balanced way to understand how quickly an organization should act. Impact asks how much harm the incident causes or could cause, while urgency asks how quickly the organization must respond before the harm becomes unacceptable. A payroll issue discovered 2 days before salaries are processed may have moderate current impact but high urgency, because delay could create major business disruption very soon. By contrast, the discovery of old suspicious activity in a retired test system might have low urgency, even if the technical details deserve eventual review. When teams use impact and urgency together, they avoid a common mistake of treating every security issue as equally immediate, which can lead to exhaustion, poor prioritization, and alert fatigue. Good categorization methods support this by helping responders understand not just what the incident is, but how its type tends to behave over time and what window exists for effective action. Many organizations also classify incidents by the business asset or information type affected, and this method is especially helpful for leaders who need to connect security activity to organizational priorities. An incident affecting public website content is different from an incident involving customer payment data, research records, industrial systems, or executive communications. Even when the technical signs look similar, the category changes the meaning because different assets have different value, regulatory concerns, and recovery needs. This is why asset inventories and data classification programs are so important to incident management, because the organization cannot sensibly classify incident significance if it does not understand what the affected system does or what kind of information it holds. For beginners, one of the most useful habits is learning to ask not only what happened, but also where it happened, to whom it happened, and what business process depends on that resource, since those questions often reveal the true seriousness faster than the raw technical alert itself. A strong categorization method also recognizes the source or origin of the incident, because the path by which a problem enters the organization can shape how it is handled. Some incidents begin externally through attackers, criminal groups, opportunistic scans, supplier compromise, or social engineering directed at employees. Others begin internally through accidental deletion, misuse of privileges, policy violations, weak process design, or well-meaning staff members making unsafe decisions under pressure. There are also environmental or operational causes, such as power disruption, hardware failure, software defects, and poor change management, which may not be malicious at all, but still create genuine security incidents when they undermine confidentiality, integrity, or availability. Distinguishing among these sources matters because leadership responses differ depending on whether the issue calls for threat containment, disciplinary review, vendor coordination, process redesign, or resilience planning. Categorization is therefore not just a technical taxonomy, but a way of connecting the incident to the broader organizational context that produced it. Another valuable angle is to categorize incidents by phase of effect, meaning whether the organization is seeing attempted activity, suspected compromise, confirmed compromise, active disruption, or lingering impact after the main event. This helps incident managers avoid flattening every case into a single bucket and instead understand where the organization is in the life cycle of the problem. An attempted attack that fails against a strong control may deserve tracking and pattern analysis, but not the same response as a confirmed account takeover with evidence of data access. A system experiencing ongoing disruption requires immediate operational coordination, while a system that has been restored may still carry residual risk if the root cause has not been identified. For beginners, this is a powerful idea because it shows that classification is not static. It evolves with the incident. As new facts emerge, the label should mature from suspicion to confirmation, from limited concern to broader impact, or sometimes from serious concern back down to a lower level when the evidence shows the initial fear was overstated. Consistency is one of the hardest goals in incident classification because different people naturally describe the same situation in different ways. One analyst may see insider misuse, another may see a policy violation, and a manager may focus on data exposure or legal risk instead. None of those views are necessarily wrong, but inconsistent labeling creates reporting problems, trend confusion, and weak executive visibility. Over time, the organization may believe phishing incidents are increasing when in reality the team simply started classifying them differently. Or it may underestimate vendor-related incidents because those cases were scattered across unrelated categories. That is why mature programs define categories clearly, provide decision criteria, and train staff to use a shared vocabulary. The goal is not rigid perfection, but enough consistency that incidents can be compared over time, measured accurately, and discussed across technical and business groups without each audience interpreting the labels in a completely different way. Escalation paths are heavily influenced by classification and categorization, which is another reason these methods are so important for CISM learners. A low-impact endpoint issue affecting one user might remain with frontline responders, but a suspected compromise involving regulated data, senior executives, or critical business services may need legal counsel, privacy leadership, communications teams, senior management, and external partners almost immediately. The category tells people what kind of expertise is needed, while the classification tells them how quickly that expertise must be engaged. When those two elements are weak, organizations either escalate too slowly and lose control of the situation, or escalate too broadly and create chaos, noise, and unnecessary fear. Good methods help incident managers route cases intelligently, which makes the response more efficient and more defensible. From a leadership perspective, this routing logic is not a side detail but part of governance, because it determines whether the organization can demonstrate a rational and repeatable process when serious incidents occur. Metrics and lessons learned also depend on good categorization. Even though beginners often think of categories only as labels used during the crisis itself, after incidents are closed, leadership wants to know what kinds of problems are happening most often, which business units are most affected, whether certain controls are failing repeatedly, and where investments would most improve resilience. Those answers become unreliable if incidents were poorly classified at intake or if categories were used inconsistently across teams. Imagine trying to measure whether training reduced phishing risk when some reports were logged as email abuse, some as malware, some as account misuse, and others as user error with no common link between them. In that situation, the organization may have plenty of data but very little usable insight. Effective categorization turns incident records into management intelligence, allowing the organization to see patterns, prioritize improvement efforts, justify budget decisions, and explain risk trends to executives in a way that is clear and credible. It is also worth recognizing that no classification method is universal because organizations differ in size, mission, industry, regulation, technology, and risk tolerance. A financial institution, a manufacturer, a hospital, and a university may all encounter malware, phishing, and service disruptions, but they will not necessarily classify or prioritize them in the same way because the business consequences differ. That means the best incident categorization approach is not the most complicated one, but the one that matches the organization's operating reality and supports timely, consistent decisions. Beginners sometimes assume maturity means having dozens of categories and layers of detail. Yet too much complexity can slow reporting, confuse responders, and lead people to choose labels randomly just to complete a form. Strong methods strike a balance between simplicity and usefulness, giving enough structure to guide action without becoming so elaborate that the process itself becomes a barrier during a stressful event. By the time you step back from all of this, the deeper lesson becomes clear. Incident classification and categorization are really about turning uncertainty into manageable decision-making. They help the organization distinguish noise from danger, connect technical signs to business meaning, assign the right level of response, and learn from what happened after the fact. For a new learner, the most important takeaway is that these methods are not just paperwork created for reporting convenience. They are part of how security management functions under pressure and how leadership creates order during confusing situations. As you continue building your understanding of CISM, remember that strong incident handling begins with strong understanding, and strong understanding begins with the disciplined habit of asking what happened, what kind of incident it is, how serious it is, what it affects, and what that means for the organization as a whole.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.